Hey, are you guys cold? Wear your jackets?
I'm actually totally fine right now.
I'm gonna fall
Wait.
asleep.
Don't move very much. Where's our other commissioner? Yeah. I should have wore a coat. Kind of cold. With that, I think it's 4 o'clock. Okay, very good. We'd like to welcome everybody to the Washington County Board of Commissioners meeting today, and we appreciate you being here. We do apologize for the heat. I guess our cooler isn't working. But we would like to congratulate Commissioner Snow for wearing a jacket. I put the tie on so I could be equally uncomfortable today. So
For now, I might take it
anyway, very good. Well, as we begin our meeting, we're really fortunate to have Michael Cruz from the Unitarian Universal Fellowship to give us our prayer and also representing our local Interfaith Council. Thank you so much, Michael,
Thank
for being
you,
here.
Commissioner. In 1776, the Unitarian John Adams wrote that Congress just passed the most important resolution in our history. July 4th should be celebrated forever, he said, across the continent with parades, shows, games, sports, and fireworks. He was right then, and 246 years later, he's still right. Another Unitarian, Thomas Jefferson, wrote our Declaration of Independence. If I would be so bold, I would like to update that immortal preamble, if they were both alive today, to read: all people, regardless of race, religion, creed, or sexual orientation, were created equal. We were given undeniable rights and responsibilities of life, liberty, freedom, and the pursuit of happiness by our Creator. Governments are created by free and fair elections to secure these rights. When government fails to ensure these rights, the people have the responsibility to change or abolish it and create a new government to ensure and magnify these unalienable rights to secure our safety and our happiness. Thank you for your service to our community and commitment to our freedoms. Happy Independence Week, and God bless America.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We'll now have, in place of our Pledge of Allegiance, the national anthem that will be sung by Lily Mae Stover. And I'm really looking forward to this.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fights o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Oh my goodness. Lily, that was beautiful. That was fantastic. We need to have her come every
Yeah.
meeting. Yeah, and saying
We may
thank
have
you.
to hire her to do that.
Yeah, well, I was thinking the same thing. We could find just a county job that,
Well,
the national anthem singer, so
And
thank you so much. That was
Thanks for
good.
singing it the way we're kind of used to. I mean, there's a lot of people that change it so dramatically and keys and notes and almost dishonor it, but you did it perfectly. Thank you.
Yeah, and it's a small room. The only thing I felt that was so good, it should have been like in a stadium with 10,000 people.
Next time,
Yes, next time, yes.
we'll get people here.
Thank you so much.
Great job.
Our first item on our agenda is our consent agenda. The consent agenda is a means of expediting the consideration of routine matters. If a commissioner requests that items be removed from the consent agenda, those items are placed at the beginning of the regular agenda. Other than requests to remove items, a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda is not debatable.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda as follows. Item A, consideration of auditor-approved claims for payment for June 22nd, 2022 through July 5th, 2022. B, consideration of regular commission meeting minutes of June 21st, 2022. C, consideration of administrative adjustments, real property. D, consideration of administrative adjustments, personal property. E, consideration of applications for property tax abatement, of which there's 10. F, acknowledgement of publication of notice of adoption of ordinance number 2022-1210-0 on Sunday, June 25th, 2022. And that's my motion.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes. Our first item on our regular agenda is consideration of purchase requests. Ray?
Okay, the first one I have here is, it's for the attorney's office, but IT is requesting it. This is for security access points and card readers for the new doors at the attorney's office remodel site. This is, all of the wiring and everything that goes with it and the labor for $12,961.29. The next one is for a replacement water heater for the west side of the jail. This is for $14,650. This is the unit only. And the final one is for asphalt and placement on the Kolob Terrace Road. This is for $57,780 for the roads department. Unless there's any questions, that's all I have.
Very good. Any questions or comments, commissioners?
I was just reading the one on the Kolob Terrace because it was for those fairly significant ruts up there that needed to be replaced for safety. So I move that we approve the purchase request as read by Ray.
I second the motion.
We have a motion and a second to approve the purchase requests. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. I will say that I think they're done with the Kolob Terrace improvements. I drove up on it, and it did improve it quite a bit. Our next item is consideration of ordinance number 2022-1211-0, an ordinance rezoning, or ordinance requesting a zone change from A20 agricultural 20-acre minimum lot size zone to RF 13.5 residential, forest residential 3,500 square feet minimum lot size zone, and R 2.5 residential agricultural 2.5 acre minimum lot size zone. The Jennings Family Trust. Scott Messel, you're
Yes.
here to give us our report.
So Commissioners, the Planning Commission reviewed application to rezone a certain property. The property is highlighted in red right there on the map. This is in Pine Valley. The address is approximately 1275 East Main Street. The applicant submitted in February of this year to rezone the property, and to rezone the property for 6 lots, and the zone that was requested was Forest Residential 13.5. It was reviewed by the Planning Commission in their meeting that was held in April, and the Planning Commission, after holding a public hearing that's required. They recommended approval of the zone change to the forest residential 13,500 square foot zone. One of the things that was brought up in the Planning Commission and prior to the Planning Commission with the applicant is just the concerns of the density of what the 13,500 square foot zone would allow on that property. That property is approximately 7.85 acres in size, and just doing the math, you could roughly fit approximately 25 lots on the property. And there was a concern by staff and others in attendance that was too dense. However, the Planning Commission did go along with the request. One of the things I want to make you aware is that with a zone change, unless it's in a PD development or it is tied to a development agreement or an exhibit in the ordinance, that when you receive a zone change, it's not for a specific amount of lots. The Jennings did have on their application that they were planning 6 lots, but this was submitted as part of the original application, and you can see adjacent. So this is the subject parcel right here, and you can see that they have 5 lots down towards, this is Main Street right there, that they have 5 lots and then a larger 6th lot, which would come down right there. Just as comparison, the adjacent property is also 7.85 acres in size, and that is the Pine Valley Legacy project. When the Pine Valley Legacy project came in, and this is just for comparison, when it originally came in as a PD rural recreation grounds and facilities, and they had 6 family lots called out, and they had nightly rental cabins. There were tent sites available, and there was going to be a large barn for gathering. And after that initial submittal for the PD, the applicant ended up coming back in and requesting, and attached to the ordinance that was eventually approved by the county commission, you can see this exhibit minus the neighboring lots. This right here on that property was an exhibit to the ordinance that was passed. And so it called out for a total of 6 lots, 5 down here, and then the larger one being open space. So the larger lot's 5 acres in size, and so the zoning was changed to A5, and then on the smaller family cabin lots down here, it was rezoned to forest residential 13,500 square feet. Staff talked with the applicant after the Planning Commission. Well, here's a copy of the general plan. The county's general plan just calls out the area as down here, just agricultural. After talking with the applicant came back and just made some adjustments, and then requested, this was submitted, rezoning this part down here to the FR 13.5, and then because we don't have a A1 zone, there wasn't enough acreage to meet the A5 zone. They requested the RA1. Staff put that more, made this map showing that exhibit of what the applicant was requesting. So it was approximately 5.5 acres down here, and then 2.2 to the north. It is staff's recommendation that it is still too dense, because even with this zone right here, you could, that could have up to like 17 residential lots in that forced residential zone. And you would be, with the RA1, there could be about 2 lots up there in that zone. And so staff's recommendation that be adjusted, or that the zone change be approved, and we have the square footage laid out, that it would be approximately 2.84 acres of the FR 13.5, and that approximately 5 acres up here for the larger lot be rezoned to A5. The A5 would allow for a dwelling, and then down here you could have 6 or 7 lots, depending on how the road was laid out in this space. And so it is staff's recommendation that the county commission can do several things, or there's several options. You can approve the recommendation made by the planning commission. You can make a determination and approve your own recommendation on it. You could table it, or you could deny the request. And so, but it is staff's recommendation that the zone change that be accepted in a manner similar to what is shown right here. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Commissioners?
Sure, would it be appropriate to ask the applicant, who I see is here, some questions here? Mr. Jennings, we, what is it, a little over a week ago, right? You and I went up and stood on the property.
Jeff, do you want to come up to the microphone, please?
And you had a few different maps and some, mainly some pencil drawings and of some homes and a few things. And you and I talked about some plans that, and I couldn't speak for the other two, obviously I was there alone with you, but for myself at least, what we thought would be acceptable. What was then resubmitted to staff seems different from what you and I talked about.
Yeah, and it's
Help me
different.
understand
It's
that.
different from what we started out, and then when we talked to staff, it's different, and now it's different. And I've learned a few things. I dropped off a photograph today to the office. Did you guys get this photograph?
No, we haven't.
Can I give this to you?
Yes.
This is the property. This is Main Street. That's the Brandon Iron Steakhouse.
Yep.
And I found out a couple of things. I think we can make this pretty easy. First thing is,
You want to go back to the microphone just so we can get you on the record?
Here, do you want to do this?
Sure.
You mind if I point on this, because I don't have a laser pointer?
Do you have a laser pointer you can use there? There you go.
Jan,
Okay.
can you turn off this light
Thank
too,
you
so that
for
we can see
indulging
that
me,
better?
I appreciate it. This is the property, I wish we had a picture that was a little better. This is the creek, right there. And as you can see, this is where the Wade property is. And this is where the Theriot property is. There's the old canal or ditch, comes right there. You can see part of it. It comes right here through the land and exits right there. The first 120 feet, almost an acre and a half, is unusable on the south side. I can't build a house over a 12-inch water main. I didn't know that. So that's a big problem. So 2 of these lots are pretty much killed right off the bat. Then back here, there is a creek protection zone that runs about 100 feet wide, so 50 feet on each side of the creek. There's 2.5 acres unusable to start with. Okay? What I see on the agenda is a 2.5 acre, a residential 2.5 acre, so that I could get a spot here to build a house. That 2.5 acres would be clear down here, and then I can't do anything here, and it says Forest Residential 13.5 on the balance. That sounds pretty reasonable to me. If you look at that picture, mind if I come up? Look at this picture. Look at the existing use, all right here, where along that zone, right here. This is me. The theory program is right down to about here, but I'm cut off clear behind this ditch. And so my suggestion is, we went from 25 lots down to about 7 or 8, if we were to make it, just like it says on the agenda, 2.5 for the back for 1 unit, and then 13.5 up until it's no usable property. So we're still about the same units we were talking about, Adam, and I think that makes it very simple to deal with. So that's what I'd recommend. And you can see that this fits quite well, really, with what's up there already. So I thought the picture speaks 1,000 words. So anyway, that's my feeling. I didn't realize that almost 3 acres is unusable.
So nothing is that simple when it comes to Pine Valley zoning.
No, and I understand.
Yeah, and so I think what we're trying to strike is some sort of balance here.
Yeah.
That preserves the neighborhood and preserves the meadow, preserves the charm of Pine Valley. You and I walked it as well, separately, and take a look at it. We were not aware, you were not aware of the
I didn't know about-
water line at the time. You did mention that you knew there was some sort of water infrastructure there. We, or staff's recommendation, tried to accommodate for that by taking you back 70 feet farther from the Theriot property, to give you a little bit more.
That's before we knew about the water line, yeah.
Well, I assumed, I mean, when you and I talked out there, I was under the assumption that, I mean, there's a flood zone in every creek and every,
Right.
so there would, I'm not surprised at all that you have restrictions as far as flooding in the back of that property, because that's almost like a given whenever you have a running body of water, especially in Washington County, where we go from floods to drought in the same month.
Well, I think the 2.5 acres back there is quite a chunk of property and would fit. And then probably around 3 acres in the middle there, and then that 1.5 acres or whatever it is up front is not usable. So I don't know how else to describe it other than that. I
Now,
think that
on the part that's up front, even though you do have a water line in it, and even though that would cause some challenges, it would still be usable for,
well, we
I mean,
granted an easement.
you'd have to,
I didn't,
yeah,
but my father-in-law did
yeah.
20, 30 years ago.
Well, a lot of people have easements going through their lots. They just have to accommodate for it
Yeah.
when they do their
This
layout
one
and
isn't on
building.
the edge, though. It's going right through the middle of that first 120 feet.
And that is, that sucks. I'll admit that.
I didn't even know
I'm
about it.
I'm pretty familiar, not with well, I'm familiar with their piece because I stood on it. But my family has several farms out in the Washington Fields, and as a kid, I used to float the canal, as many people did when we were kids. And then they piped it, and they put it in the same footprint where the canal had been, and it cuts through some really prime property. It cuts 10 acres off, and we can't do anything with it. And it's because I've got a giant pipe sitting underneath it. You can put a parking lot over it, but it's right where we would love to have put a strip mall or a grocery store or something. And in order to move that was $2.5 million. Now, you can move it. I'm going to guess that moving a 12-inch pipe is going to be a lot less than $2.5 million.
Oh, I'm sure.
But it honestly, it was just the unfortunate reality of that's the cost of doing business sometimes is we didn't ask the pipe to be put in right there, but it was, and they had an easement the same way, and it came across a piece of land, and we had to develop and deal with it the best we could, and And the guy next to us has the exact same parcel, and he doesn't have that problem because the pipe doesn't cut across his land. And so he didn't have that $2.5 million expense, but that's just life sometimes, unfortunately. So I'm not discounting that it's an impact on you. It is.
Well, it's huge.
You could move it. You could
Yeah.
probably move the pipeline along the edge of the property boundary and reclaim all of the usable land at the front. But it's going to come at some expense, for sure.
Well, and I'm not really too excited about moving it in that I really don't want to be right next to the street. And the Theriots, with their proposal, which I wasn't really part of at all, was unknown really to me. So I don't want to mirror what they're doing, which is kind of what's happened. And I want to be back. I feel like it's back. Our property doesn't go down in a hole, kind of like part of the valley does into the meadow. It's straight. It goes straight across. The elevation is pretty high. And it's not swamp ground or floodplain. The creek has a designated zone. Between that and that back property, we're talking at least 2.5 acres, maybe 3 acres. That's why I'm thinking that 2.5, which is not what I wanted, but a 2.5 would be a great compromise. And then do the balance of usable property at, if you wanted to do it, 20,000 feet per lot. That cuts the density almost in half. I'm not trying to build apartment buildings and, Airbnbs. I'm just trying to protect property rights and be able to build something in the future.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, and that's a very fair point. And as somebody who appreciates private property rights, and think that people should be able to do about what they want with the land that they own, as long as it fits with the normal use of what your neighbor has and what the normal area is. I don't believe in private property rights had you been coming in and saying, I'd like to build a factory on the land, which
No.
you're not doing, obviously.
Well,
But
that picture, it shows right where the Wade property and all their houses are and stuff, and I'm saying that we ought to be able to be allowed to do something similar.
Well, I'm saying that, and that issue, fair point, but that issue is not, we're not voting on today, right?
No.
That's not the zone changes
No,
before
I'm just saying
us.
that's an existing
The
use and
zone
very
change before us,
obvious.
I'm also looking at, and I've done this a whopping 10 months now, 11 as of today, I think. 11 months now, but I have been around long enough to see zone changes in other areas that they asked for. Well, but I don't plan on putting in 20 homes, but yes, I am basically asking for, I mean, if I just did the math on that, approximately you're looking for almost 18 homes
If
possible.
you take 2.5 acres out of that 7, what do you end up with? 4.5 acres.
I'm just talking
and we
the
lose
5.5
an acre and a half. That means 3 acres maximum.
Right, but
to
5.5
build on.
acres,
3 acres would be the net right now, the way the property sits.
right, but you could move the pipeline. I'm just saying, I'm not gonna argue with you. I'm just
And
saying that there's an ability that some people have come in, they've asked for a zone change so that I can build a few houses for my kids or something. The person passes away, this is before I was on the
Right.
commission, but I know
Oh, I
the
totally get
situation.
it.
The person passes away, the kids honestly didn't want the land, and immediately the zone change there is already there, and they went ahead and put in all 20 homes, which is, you could, depending on the road, and I'm not an engineer, so you could fit 18 under the requirement or under the zone change you're asking for here. Between, you get the 2 homes in the backs on the far north end of the property.
Just one, because it's 2.5 acres per one. We were talking about, the staff was talking about 1 acre, but on the agenda, it says 2.5 acres, and I'm fine with that.
Okay. All right, I'll give you one. We'll take off one of
You
those
know,
then.
and then
That's
in the
that's
front-
19 homes. Hold on, let me give me just
Okay.
a second. I was almost done. That's 19 homes that you could put in based on the road. We'll take off 1 or 2. You've got a road and some infrastructure you'd have to put in.
Well, and the
Now, I'm not
creek-
saying that's your plan.
The creek's probably 1.5 acres of lost land too.
Okay, that's still a lot of homes, right? And so
I
when
think
we're
you're
talking about
talking
private
7
property rights,
max.
that's not what you're. Man, I'm not doing. I guess somebody else. Scott, maybe you'd want to. If you see me, if am I wrong on this? That I'm taking 43,560, which is a square. That's the square footage of an acre, right? Times 5.55 divided by 13,500 square foot lots gives me 17.9 lots.
That's correct, except
Okay.
you're saying this is 5.5. without taking the net of any of the lost property or the stream. The stream bed is huge.
No,
That's
I have
gonna be an acre and
I have
half,
a,
at
I have a
least.
question, and Scott, maybe you can answer this, because it really is this, what we're trying to do is balance, and like we said, we wouldn't grant an industrial zone or something just because you own the property. It has to fit into the neighborhood. And so, you look across the road up there at the front, and clearly you have, beautiful big homes in a subdivision right across the street from you. Now, the Wade property, in my estimation, is built in kind of a farm compound, if you will, which if we were to compare it to your property and the larger piece in the back, you would be allowed almost the same rights as the Wade family has. You just couldn't subdivide it. You would just build it and leave it in one chunk,
Just one
which
chunk.
would also preserve kind of that, the splitting of the baby, if you will, or I hate that analogy, but this endeavor that we have as land use folks, in charge of land use, and especially a community like Pine Valley, that there's a sensitivity to the land because that's what makes it so beautiful, is that by giving you the development rights up close to the front, which is comparable to your neighbors, and then leaving a larger lot to the back, you still have what your neighbors have, is kind of the way I see it as I was evaluating. Now, Scott, is that true what I just said about the bigger lot could be equal to what his neighbors have in the back?
Yes, that's correct. As we've looked at it, some of where that pipeline is going across the front of the lot, property right there. With the land use, we don't want it to just be a remnant piece. It can't stay a remnant part of an A20 zone, which it's currently zoned. It would need to be incorporated, and as was said, with all development, there is a cost, and the applicant could, if he decided to, go in and move through the platting process, move the easement, and go through the necessary construction process to move the line and develop the property. What was done with, let me go to, what was done here is what was shown on the exhibit submitted by the applicant was approximately 120 feet back. We went and added that here. You see we have that zoning line going across right there. So it even makes up for it right there. So if he decided not to develop it, but what we are talking about is with this property, just looking at it from the 10,000 foot level, is you could have the number of lots that we have discussed today. And so one of the things that the Theriates did as part of their project was they came in, and this property outlined with the layout of the lots was submitted as an exhibit tied to the zone change. And that made it so that if anything in the future came in, they would have to come back and amend the zone change. It almost kind of a pseudo development agreement / PD, or it functions a little bit more like that.
Commissioner Almquist?
3 questions. What would be the access on the north side of the river to that parcel across the way? North side of the river, upper part of the map,
Okay, let me show you.
approximately an acre or so.
See this lane right here?
Yes.
This lane was a county lane for the last 100 years. Homer Hansen used to own this property, right, all of this property. And in the 80s, I sold him this 5 acres. This was our property. I saved this property that's adjacent and on the lane, on the north end and on the south end. Then in 1999, Homer Hansen hired Steve Snow and came in here and tried to get this property put in his name. And the commission listened. I called Steve Snow about this and talked to him a couple of weeks ago. And he says the commission realized this had never been granted by the Bracken family to the county. Never been. And I talked to Mr. Wade about this a couple of months ago, in fact, and he basically understands and just said, take care of it. So we're trying to deal with that. But we have access right here, and I would have to get an easement from the Theriots. But since I'm the manager of this property and tended the property for the last 45 years, they will listen and they don't care. But that's how I would assume that we would access it. If not, I'd put a bridge across the creek. But I'd like to be here, and I'd like to have our homes for our children and grandchildren in here, at least 4 or 5 someday, and this be trees and a park and grass and leave it beautiful and pristine. And I didn't realize we had this pipeline running through here until just a week ago, and realized we got a big problem.
A second question. Is the pipeline under pressure now?
Yes,
It is the supply
the main
line.
irrigation line to Pine Valley. The whole Santa Clara Creek right now is funneled into that pipeline.
And according to your document, your property's 282 feet wide.
Correct.
And at the creek area, you said you had to preserve 50
About 120 feet back to this point where it starts.
But up at the creek area above,
Yeah, up here,
not the pipeline,
this
you
area.
said you had to preserve 100 feet
Well,
wide.
see, if you can't see it on this map, but on other maps, there's a line drawn along this creek that's about 50 feet on both sides.
Yes.
That's a protection area that obviously you couldn't do anything with. And so my feeling is that if you made this 2.5 residential acreage right here, that'd take us clear down to here.
It's RA1 is what they're proposing, not 2.5.
Oh, well, on the agenda, doesn't it say 2.5?
So anyway, my
Anyway,
question,
and
my
so-
question is, 282 times 100 is 28,200.
Well,
That's
then that's
three
not even an acre.
That's
a half
3/5 of an acre. So it's, by you claiming that the creek takes away 2 acres,
No, about 1.5 acres is what I figured.
it's 28,000 square feet by this math. 282 feet
And I
wide.
don't know what that protection zone is exactly. I'm just guessing.
But if it's
But
100,
it's significant.
if on the record you say it's 100 feet, that's all we have to go by, is it?
Okay, I don't know what it is. But
Okay.
this map, on some of the maps, in fact, I have a map that shows it if you'd like to see it. But I don't know if it's necessary.
I think we've seen it, so.
But yeah, but there's so much of the land that's not usable that if I could put a house here, if that was zoned 2.5 acres, I'm okay with that because I don't want more than one house. And down here we're blocked. And so I think that this should be something reasonable. And even in my notes I wrote to you today that you don't have, I said, look, maybe make it 20,000 square foot lots instead of 13.5. And just zone this so that at least we can have something to work with. At that point, if you deduct this property and what we can't use here, that's significant. I think it's close to 3.5 acres.
So I think what we're trying to find, and I'll let all the commissioners speak for themselves, is we're trying to find a balance. We also, I mean, we have, what you're suggesting, if you would have, we talked out on your property that you weren't really interested in doing a PUD type of development because you have to go get all the engineering
Well,
and,
the
and
overlay.
drawings and stuff, and you really just kind of wanted the zone change. The problem is you apply zones out in different areas, you have to be careful because the zone change is the only area that we have an opportunity to really scrutinize like this. Once the zone change has been granted, then everything becomes a conditional use. So if we give a higher density throughout the whole acreage and you say, I would, here's my dream, well, you may or may not fulfill your dream. It might happen differently. And so as we're dealing with something sensitive like that, that's why kind of, in my mind, we talked about pulling back a little bit to what the neighbors have and giving you still what your other neighbors have in the back as well.
That's why I showed you those drawings, to show you that the existing uses all around that area make this look pretty reasonable. And my feeling is even if we came clear down here and made it, R1, 2.5, or wherever that point is, and then just do the whole thing, and then you could also add a caveat to it, that we will not develop the front 120 feet. We won't move the pipeline, we won't do it. I don't want to anyway. So I'm not trying to maximize the zoning here. What I'm trying to do is just preserve our ability to do something nice. I would like to see a little street comes in here and a little pond, maybe an irrigation retention pond, that the irrigation district's begged to do. They've wanted that. And then maybe have a little road here and then a cluster of homes, maybe another road and a cluster. And I'd like one house back there. But zoning makes that possible. I've zoned many pieces of property and done many developments. And to me, this seems like it's pretty easy. The only question is, the existing uses around indicate to me that that is not out of the ordinary of what's up there. So,
It's not the existing use on either side of you.
and then right here, to have a 25,000 square foot mansion being built, that's unbelievable. Everything we do here will be half of that. So I don't know, I'm just trying to be as reasonable as possible without locking me into something that I think is not right. I don't think it's right to say to me, look, because these guys did that, then we're gonna make you build it right here, even though we know that I've only got that much. That's not enough. It's not fair.
Mr. Chairman, if I might
Please.
add, so legally, based on the application that's before you, because it's not a plan use development, with a plan use development, you can actually go through and say, here's where the road's going to be, here's where we're going to build, we're going to have open space here, and that becomes binding on the development for that piece. But the application that's before you today is for straight zoning.
Yep.
It's a straight zoning question. So there's no, I'm not challenging what the applicant is saying here. It's just if you give the zone change, the next question is what is allowable in terms of density under this zone. It's not what was planned by the developer for this zone change. It's really what is allowable under the code for this zoning designation.
Yeah.
So
That's why I said the 20,000 level. That limits us to less than 2 units per acre. If you take the street out or the lane, 2 per acre. If we had 4 usable acres, that's 7, maybe 8 units. That's not much. So that's why I'm thinking we ought to take that front 120 and call it, well, I think we ought to call it all 13.5 down to the 2.5 acre zone so that it's simple. But I'll also agree to whatever you want. I'm not opposed to saying I won't move the pipe and add 2 more units. I don't really want to. In fact, we only have 3 water permits right now, and we don't see in the future of having any more water up there. That means 3. If we build all 3, and I think we're going to build 1 as long as I'm alive. So I don't know how you build any more units up there without any water.
Well, and that's kind of my point, Mr. Jennings, is that when you said you'll build 1 in your lifetime, what your kids decide to do, or whoever the heirs are of the land, may have a different plan. And I don't know what water's going to look like. I pray there is more water in the future because we need it desperately. But they may be able to acquire different water connections. And again, a friend of mine who had a wonderful place on Cedar Mountain, they would have traded anything for that cabin. I'm almost done. They traded anything for that cabin. But the second it burned down, the kids said from Vegas, who also said, oh, we love it up here, sold it like that. And they didn't care so much. So for me and you, we stood on that property. I spent well over an hour with you.
Yep.
Pleasurable time, and it was nice to get out of the heat. I think there is something special about Pine Valley, as you do. You and I agree on this. We said, I don't think it has to match square inch for square inch, which your neighbors had, but you and I talked about standing right about where that pipeline is where the trucks were stopped, right? Mm-hmm. You may have to move the pipeline. Nobody wants to. My family didn't want to either. That's a decision you'll have to make. That's just the nature of that piece of property you've got. In my opinion, Mr. Chairman, you and I discussed you wanted homes for your kids and you wanted a place for you and your wife up against on the other side of the creek there. I think the proposal by staff accomplishes all of those things.
I agree.
It allows you a home on the other side of the creek where you can tuck it up there, and the less density. I see where you're coming from. But I would, as you and I discussed standing there and agreed on at the time, tucking them closer to the road actually helps because it maintains more of the open space, and that unique feel of what makes Pine Valley so special is that meadow. And I understand you're not down in the real marsh area, but you're still pretty meadow right there. And so Mr. Chairman, I recommend that we follow. It's not a motion. I'll let you, the two of you can speak as well. But from my perspective and what we agreed on standing there at the property, giving the additional 75 or 80 feet or whatever it is past what the Theriot line got is about what we talked about. And it still allows you to accomplish your interest of a home for each of your kids. You've got parcels for that. Maybe having to do some infrastructure changes to accomplish that. I don't know how, I'm not an engineer, so I'm not even going to speak to that moment. But giving you the density zoning that allows you to accomplish what your kids want, what you wanted for your kids, and it gives you a home for you and your wife, which is what you and I agreed on, right?
I call the question.
In contrary, I hate to be contrary, but we didn't know about the pipeline.
Nope, you're
And
true.
I told you that I felt like we needed to protect our property rights, and that I felt like that if we did that, then we can come in at a future date and do something. And what I'm trying to tell you is, as a developer, years ago, I haven't for a long time, but after you take out all the infrastructure, all the streets, all of that stuff, pipeline, the protection zones and everything, we're gonna have maybe 4 acres. If we did 20,000 square foot lots, that's 7 houses.
Thank you.
So that's why I'm saying, if you limit me to that little tiny spot next to the Theriot, that seems extremely arbitrary and absolutely meaningless of what they did. I don't care what they did.
But that's not what you and I discussed standing there in your property. We discussed this, sir.
I told you I wanted to be further down from the Theriot, not right there.
Well,
But Adam, I didn't know about this the pipeline. I didn't realize that's
I
a big
understand
deal.
very.
It's a big deal.
I understand.
Anyway,
Well, Jeff, we sure appreciate you
I'm so sorry to
speaking,
take
and
up
no,
so much time.
this has been a very good discussion, and I think it highlights kind of the sensitivity and the situation that we're dealing with in Pine Valley. I think I have a question.
I called the question, yeah.
Called a question. Have you made a motion?
Commissioners, I'm sorry to interrupt. If you could include as part of your motion, just for clarity's sake, to adopt attachment 5 and the findings that are included as part of the staff report.
Which one's it?
what's attachment 5?
This attachment 5 now?
Yes.
Is that the staff
That
proposal?
is the staff recommended zone change.
Why does it say in the agenda, residential 2.5 acre minimum lot size and R13.5? I thought that was the staff recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, Victoria Hales is here. She's worked quite a bit on this zone change.
Yeah, Jeff.
I realize there's a lot of pressure on you
Yeah.
not to do this. I realize that.
Well, there's not. We're just trying to do what's right. Really appreciate. I think we've had a vibrant discussion. We'll now let Victoria take the podium and answer some questions for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate you.
Part of the reason the notice was changed is because it was Mr. Theriot coming in and changing his drawings. So his original,
Jennings.
Mr. Jennings, sorry. Mr. Jennings coming in and changing his drawings so that that top portion, he first asked for RA1, then there was another drawing where it was 2.5. Reasonable notice has been met here by that agenda item and the notification. So this whole project has morphed over time. So it's kind of been a moving target.
Yeah.
That's why the notice says what it says. Mr. Jennings has the same acreage as Mr. Theriot did. And so when you compare them and when you do zoning, you're looking at compatibility. I think that the staff took the lay of the land and tried to adjust up to account for his development problems and to account for the fact that it's not perfect, right? It's not a mirror of the Theriot property. It's a zone. This is just zoning. We cannot control at zoning, and we cannot condition at zoning how many lots he gets. He gets however many he can fit on the land after the zone is changed. So this is about zoning, not about him doing a planned development where there's going to be one house here and 6 houses in the middle or whatever he wants. If he wanted to come in for a PD, then he would have asked for PD zoning. But this is just straight zoning.
Okay.
So you are the legislative body, you are the land use authority in this case, and you can, Scott outlined, you can deny the request, then he'd have A20 zoning. You could go with staff recommendation where the zone is changed at the bottom to 13.5 and at the top to a similar ag size lot as is
A5.
compatible with the Theriot. Or you could come up with a different configuration, and whatever you want to do is in your prerogative.
Different to a certain point. We can't invent zones while we're up here
Right.
on the fly. We got to do something that
Right.
fits into the compatibility of the county and the community. No, I was just kidding, but thank you so much.
Yeah.
Mr. Chairman?
I feel like I had a motion over here, at least one that was
Well,
formulating.
I hadn't made so I'll clarify just for the record, because I had specifically said this isn't a motion, so I gave the two of you plenty of time to discuss as well. But based on, I move, and for the reasons that we've already discussed, and at the staff recommendation, the 2.84 approximate acreage gives a little over 9 lots at the forest residential zoning on that front section, plus the additional 5 acres rezoned to A5 in the back, the north end of the property, seems to accomplish everything that the applicant has stated in conversations to achieve. And so for that reason and the other things we've discussed here today, I move that we accept staff recommendation on this zone change and including Amendment 5. And would you like me, is there something else you wanted me to say specifically on that?
That's correct. It's just the
Motion?
map that depicts what you've said.
That's my motion, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second on the zone change as stated by Commissioner Snow, adopting the findings or the recommendations of staff. All those in favor of that motion, say aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. Thank you. Item 3 is consideration of resolution number R-2022-2968, a resolution approving a lease extension for DCFS. Nicole?
Yes, I'm
Elshaw,
gonna make
our
this-
county administrator.
I'm going to make this very quick. We currently own the Office Plaza that's just up the street from us, and the Department of Child and Family Services has leased a pretty large portion of that building, and they have come back to us and have asked for a 5-year renewal, which I'm bringing to the commissioners today to recommend that we renew their lease for a term of 5 years.
Very good. And I'd like to thank Nicole for all the work she does in some of these leases with our state and federal partners. It takes a lot of work. Devin Snow also needs to be recognized. Any discussion on this motion? Any motion on this motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the consideration of resolution R 2022-2968 as read into the minutes.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. The motion passes. Item 4 is consideration of resolution R-2022-2969, a resolution approving an agreement for data storage for the Washington County Children's Justice Center. And who's going to speak to that, Nicole?
It shows that we have Christy, but I don't know if we have her on Zoom.
I can speak to that. If she's
Yes,
not on
please.
Zoom, I did review this agreement. This is a need, the Justice Center has a need for cloud-based storage systems. This is an agreement that the Utah Children's Justice Center negotiated, and as part of that agreement, counties can join as a participant to that agreement. And with that participation agreement, the state will cover the cost for that cloud-based storage service. So this participation agreement would allow the Justice Center to participate and have the state pay for the cost of that service. So you're being asked to approve that agreement today.
And may I add, in discussions with not only the state as well as the director, Christy Pike, there came to be a need for a higher level of security of private data and personalized information that goes through the CJC, and that it wanted to be centralized so that they could make sure that each system was somewhat uniform. So that's why the legislature, together with the state, said, let's protect the information and make it uniform, and that's partially, not wholly, why we need to pass this.
Yeah, I
I
was
make a
wondering if-
motion to make that resolution R 2022-2969 to approve the agreement for data storage for the Washington County Children's Justice Center.
I second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, the motion passes. Item 5 is consideration of resolution R-2022-2970, a resolution approving amendments to agreements with Dixie State University to reflect its new name, Utah Tech University. Devin?
Thank you. Yes, so the Dixie name change went into effect earlier this month, and the county has existing agreements with the university that are still in force. And so we need to amend those existing agreements to reflect the new name of the university. And this is a simple amendment that would update the name of the university and would leave all of the other obligations under those agreements in place. It would just change the name to reflect change.
The changing of the name does not null and void the previous agreements?
No, there's still binding. We're
What if we just make them continue with the DBA, doing business as Dixie State University? Because I'm inclined to vote against it just because I'm contrary. And nothing is, you said this was simple, you know, nothing's that simple when you go to rename a university.
Yeah, and by simple, I mean just the act of amending to update the true name of the entity that we're contracting with. I understand there are a lot of issues there, but it is a simple amendment in that respect. We're just changing out the name at this point.
But the true name may not be accurate, maybe the name they go by.
The name that's
True is a philosophical statement.
and I'm a humble attorney. I don't wax philosophically up here. All I know is our dusty code books at the office. We want it to
We
reflect
respect that.
reality. Right.
Well, I'd make a motion, we table this and just let them sweat it out a few years and then see how that works out. But it's on the record, so I'll act more professional and just defer to one of my county commissioners to speak out on this issue.
Well, owing to the legal requirements, setting aside personal feelings, the item number 5, the resolution 2022-2970, changing the legal documents to reflect the legislatively imposed name upon our local university, I ask for its approval.
Reluctant second. Second motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'm just going to give it a no vote here, so let the record reflect.
There you go.
Okay. Our next item is a consideration of Resolution R-2022-2971, a resolution approving a lease of county fire apparatus to Dameron Valley Fire Special Service District. Commissioner Almquist,
Yeah.
you had a chance to, no, this is our Dameron Valley Fire engine, isn't it?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is a pumper truck that we have agreed to lease to them for the purpose of not only fighting fires efficiently, but having one that they can rely upon to extend their service to maybe use their old one in some cases, but primarily this one is what they need to really put out fires. So having said that, if there's any other discussion, I'll make a motion.
Well, yeah, I'll just make one comment real quick, just for those along the Highway 18 corridor who may say, well, wow, as long as we're handing out fire engines, we'd love one as well. Given the complexity and the service along that corridor, we felt this is the best, I feel this is the best way to place one of those fire engines that we own to better serve the people, not just in Dameron Valley, but along the entire corridor, with a high-quality, usable machine that they don't currently have.
Yep.
Well, and it goes without saying that they're interested in putting out fires. They're not interested in boundaries. Mm-hmm. That history has shown that they do care about what's happening all around them. And they tend, like know, kids at a campground, whoever's got the biggest fire, that's where everybody goes. And that's definitely at their heart, no matter what the boundary is to get there, put out the fire, protect structure and people. And so based on that, I'm sure it's not going to just be used in Dameron.
No.
They are willing to respond, as tradition has shown, anywhere they are needed. So, yeah. I make a motion then that we pass resolution number R 2022-2971, approving a lease for county fire apparatus to Dameron Valley Fire Special Service District.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. Our next item is item 7, consideration of resolution R-2022-2972, a resolution approving a public defender agreement. Nicole Felshaw?
Yes, so this year we received a grant from Indigent Defense Commission for a special victim public defender, and we put that out. And one of our current public defenders wanted to take that position, so that left an open regular public defender agreement and position. We did again advertise that, and Derek Gallacher, you might be familiar with him. He actually is from our attorney's office, and he was interested in the position, and we are offering that to him based upon approval today. He would start July 18th if approved in commission meeting today.
So is Derek leaving our attorney's office?
Derek is.
Because that would
but-
be kind of awkward if he was prosecuting
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
defending in
No,
the same
the
case.
line is drawn very clearly. We completely separate that, although according to state statute, the county's responsible for both ends of it, but we keep that
Yes.
clearly separated. And I did talk to Eric, because at one point he took one of our public defenders and he hired them in the attorney's office. So I said, right back at you, now we're even. But Eric said he'll make a great public defender, so we're really excited to have him.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, I move we approve resolution R-2022-2972, approving the public defender agreement as stated.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The motion passes. Our next item is consideration of resolution R-2022-2973, a resolution appointing Paul Lowe to the Administrative Control Board of the Hurricane Valley Special Fires, the Hurricane Valley Fire Special Service District, and he is a council member in the town of Virgin, and we have a resolution that they have put forward, correct, Nicole?
Correct, that's correct.
And I'd like to make a motion that we appoint Paul to that board. So
I'll second that motion.
we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes.
And this is just to fill Bruce Dunsley's position for the rest of his term, just so we're aware.
Very good. Our next item is consideration of resolution R-2022-2974, resolution approving Washington County's withdrawal from the interlocal cooperative agreement for the operation and management of Confluence Park. And so for anybody listening that is not familiar, Confluence Park is some agricultural farmland that was purchased that sits mostly within the city limits of Laverton, but also touches into Tokerville and Herkin as well. Let's see, we have Cameron Rogan. Cameron, if you wouldn't mind speaking a little bit to this.
Yeah, so because it also has those neighboring communities, about 15 years ago, or a little more than 15 years ago, those communities engaged with Washington County to kind of form a cooperative agreement known as the Interlocal Cooperative Agreement that you guys are considering withdrawing from now. It had a lot of things in there that haven't really been fully followed closely or come to fulfillment. There was initial thoughts that maybe there would be financial contributions from different communities to support different projects. Primarily, it's been Washington County funding the bulk of all activities in Confluence Park over the last 15 to 20 years, and more so in the last 5 years or so. And so about a month ago, because of these changes and some other proposed changes about how often we meet, we looked at the bylaws and we considered potential options. And that was one of the options, was withdrawal. And so it's up for you guys to consider, what do you want to do? Do you want to continue to tweak this cooperative agreement or just withdraw and form a new agreement that would provide, still some sort of a collaborative process with those communities, because we find that is very helpful to work with them. And so if you have any other questions regarding, what that might look like, or maybe we should discuss that further, but up for, I guess, decision now is just withdrawal from that cooperative agreement.
Yeah. Well, I think for quite a few years, I was actually on the city council in La Verkin when this was first purchased by the Virgin River Land Trust. I believe they purchased Terry West's property at that time. They later purchased land from Gordon Wood. And of course, this comes with a serious conservation easement. There's also utilities that run through this farm. There was water that was washed out of the diversion dam was washed out prior to the purchase. But anyway, for quite a few years, there was a certain sense of kind of abandonment by the county. The county hadn't really been involved. The cities didn't know what their role was. And so I'm not faulting anybody, but out of that, they created this interlocal agreement that we've been operating under. But it still hasn't kind of solved some of the problems of who owns the property, which is the county. And under Cameron's predecessor, Bob Sandberg, with Kathleen Nilsson's help, they began to secure some grants. The county continued to contribute more. That contribution and investment by the county has been much more substantial over the last few years. I think now we're up to about $1.6 million that the county's invested very recently. Just finished a beautiful, very long walking bridge because there's a floodplain there. There's been some other, very good improvements made to the park. So our thought isn't to abandon cooperation, but to simply bring it back under the county, invite our communities to participate with us as we continue to go forward. And we've had some great dialogue, but right now it gets a little clunky, a little awkward. Cameron doesn't set the meetings, doesn't set the agenda, but yet he and other members of our staff are being asked to come and report and basically ask permission to do what the county doesn't really need to ask permission to do. But yet at the same time, we're not trying to say that we want to move away from cooperation or partnerships. So.
Well, it's still a gem to those neighboring communities, and I think they'll find ways to contribute and be part of it. They've always volunteered some time, I think, if you ask, and planting trees, I know, and assessing needs down there, but it'll still be used by them and for their benefit. So based upon that, and any organization has to function properly, and this one may morph into something else, but for the time being, I make a motion to approve Resolution R 2022-2974, approving Washington County's withdrawal from the interlocal cooperative agreement for the operations and management of Confluence Park.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, the motion passes. Our final item is Commissioner's report. I would like to thank Commissioner Snow for throwing all the candy yesterday at the parade.
Oh my gosh, yes.
He did a very good job. It's hard to be in too many places during the 4th of July. It's always been one of those holidays it's been difficult. You have family and everything to balance, but you took one for the team. And
193,000 residents in the county. I swear there was 3 million people at the parade. So
yeah.
no, absolutely. You know what? It's a fun thing. I love the 4th of July, as so many of us do, and I love parades. So yesterday was a great day all around. I went to the fireworks last night. It was a good day. So yeah.
Well, and I can report too that Hilldale in 2015 organized a 4th of July celebration based around Welcome Home. Between Hilldale and Colorado City, a lot of friction, a lot of things have happened in the last decade, and this was designed to bring families together. As they discussed, 2015 was a little awkward, but 16 got better, 17, 18, of course, COVID came along, but I can say that on Saturday night, there was quite a celebration with a lot of people there, a lot of welcome home messages, of course, the band that played and the organizers and those who sang, very patriotic and very, let's say, heartstrings were pulled with families that prior to were torn apart but are now been brought back together under great leadership of the mayor and councils that are there. There were quite a few dignitaries that came all the way from Kingman and Phoenix to be there. And I thought that was interesting to show their support. The county's ambulance that was leased to Hilldale Fire was there. Chief, you'd like to hear that? And everybody, they had a tremendous fireworks show. And where it was, I thought any minute the show is not going to be over. The next show will be the fire to put out. But they managed it quite well, and they had a lot of trucks and ready to do anything that got crazy. Right as the concert started, the literal hurricane winds stopped. And I thought that was the miracle, because I'm sure they would not have had the fireworks show with the same winds that were there. But 3 hours later, it was perfect evening, and all commissioners were recognized as contributing to not only Hilldale and the things we can help with there, but also that healing and moving forward for that city.
Mr. Chairman, one other thing I want to contribute. Just Saturday, on behalf of all of us, I went to the groundbreaking for United We Pledge, which is an organization started by the founders of Balance of Nature, and they did a groundbreaking for a new 160-acre campus out in Hurricane of a Liberty Village, which is similar to the American Village back in Alabama, which is a replica of a bunch of Liberty Hall and other historic buildings in the founding of America, and a place where school field trips and others can come and learn, and visitors, and it'll be a wonder. It was a great day and a great project. I hope it was the groundbreaking. It'll be done in 4 years. 4th of July 2026 is supposed to be their ribbon cutting. So, given supply chain management, let's hope they can get that done. But while there, it was brought up, just something that I'd heard before, and that I encouraged, just that yesterday was the 4th of July. Encourage anybody who reads or hears this later, that it reminded us that, this country, our kids will never fight. The next generation will never fight for anything that they do not value, and they will not value anything that they have not been taught. And so I just implore all of our citizens. I took the time with my kids, my wife and I, with our little kids yesterday, to remind them of that it's not hot dogs and fireworks, as much as those are wonderful things, but the value of freedom and of liberty, that if we don't impart that to our children, they will not value it when it comes time to fight, as they inevitably will at every generation. So we can do our own little part.
That is a fantastic message. Yesterday, we had an opportunity. They had the artifacts over here in the basement of the tabernacle, and it was just really crowded. As we got in there, they said Glenn Beck is upstairs doing a presentation. I snuck in there. There was like this perfect row right to the side there. His wife and family was sitting there, and had an opportunity to go up afterwards, and just a kind of a delightful thing. I will say one other thing. I congratulate Hurricane on a tremendous fireworks show. Chief, I don't know if you guys were involved as much with the fire department, but it used to be when I was a kid, they'd light the fireworks off in Lavercan over the lookout area, and the fun part was as the fireworks would go off, then the fire would start. And then as you would go home, you would see all the firemen up there putting out the hillside that was now on fire. But they shot it over the top of the lake, and it was just beautiful. But what was really fun is there was a couple boats down on the dock. They had their Lee Greenwood, their patriotic music blaring, and I could just hear younger people just belting out, these, God Bless the USA and other songs. And it was just a lot of fun to kind of realize that there were some young people down there just really enjoying the 4th of July and the spirit of patriotism. And to Commissioner Snow's point, though, I am glad that the American Village is coming here. I think it fits right into our heritage and who we are as a people, and our love of country and community. So it was a great celebration.
Agreed.
With that, we will stand adjourned.